Welcome to Mental Makeover Radio, your go-to destination for meaningful conversations about mental health. I'm your host and your trusted therapist bestie, Cecilia Manella. Join us as we explore the complexities and messiness of human experience by addressing your questions and concerns. I'm here to provide a straightforward and practical therapy advice. So grab your favorite beverage, whether it's tea, coffee, or whatever tickles your taste buds, and get ready to embark on a mental makeover. This is Mental Makeover Radio. I'm your host, Cecilia Manella. I am really glad that you're here to this conversation today. I want to talk about something that's come up quite a bit in my therapy practice as of late. And it's also just a topic that I just love talking about and that comes up quite often, is the topic of sexual desire. So if you've got little ones in the car with you, you might want to put on some headphones or not have the little ones around. But, it's also a really good conversation to maybe have with your teenager or young adult or, people in your life that maybe need to listen to this episode around sexual desire, because I think that we have a lot of misunderstandings about it. And I'm here to maybe burst some of those assumptions that are incorrect and welcome you into a conversation that might be a little bit different when it comes to sexual desire. Now, we all want more of it. If I were to ask you to rate your sexual desire on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest and 1 being the lowest, where would you put yourself? And do you think that's consistent? And I'm going to tell you it's not. Wherever that is, whatever your number is, whether it's a 2 or an 8 or a 5 or a 9 or even a 10, that can ebb and flow and change. We have a lot of misconceptions when it comes to sexual desire and sexuality. And, those misconceptions really hurt us and they harm us because they create expectations and limitations. And it tells us what we should be feeling and how it should be, and doesn't really accept what actually is or trying to understand what's actually happening with you. And the first thing to know about sexual desire is that it ebbs and flows. There's no such thing as consistency. I hate to tell you. It's kind of the shittiest misconception out there is that somehow sexual desire is consistent. So if you rated yourself at, say, at a 5, is to think that it's always going to be a 5 from now until the end of time and that it's always been a 5. And that's not true. And the reason why we need to come to terms with the ebb and flow of sexual desire is that it's directly related to our hormones. And we're all in hormonal cycles. Whether you're a man or a woman or transgendered, it doesn't really matter. If you are a human being on this planet, you are in a hormonal cycle. Now, if you're someone that has menstrual cycles, then that's hormone cycles every about 30 days, 4 weeks or so. And as you know, it comes and goes and it's pretty predictable to the most part. If you don't have a cycle anymore, let's say you're menopausal or that's changed, that's also a very large hormonal shift in your life that can cause a lot of havoc. And if you are someone that's mainly in the testosterone world, know that your hormonal cycles are daily in fluctuations. And we don't often talk about that either, that these cycles happen all the time. And we are in different phases of those cycles. Hormones are responsible not only for our sexuality, sexual drive, and sexual desire, but they are also really necessary for overall functioning of ourselves, of our mind, how our brain functions, how our brain works. They're responsible for our emotions, how we connect to other people, our experiences of love, our experiences of betrayal or loneliness, these emotions that we feel. They're responsible for our sexual desire connection, our need for sexuality and sexual intimacy. But they're also required for basic functioning as a human. And we really minimize the role of hormones and we kind of regulate it into this like box. And we think it's just responsible for these pieces, let's say sexual drive and desire and connection. But in truth, hormones are required for our entire functioning. This is why menopause is such a mind fuck in so many ways because it really disrupts your entire being, how you feel and how you show up in the world and emotions and how you think and your memory and all these pieces. So hormones are a really complex system of our endocrine system. So that's like functioning in our brain. And it is necessary for our existence, but also it creates a lot of ebb and flow in sexual desire. So I want you to know that not only are you normal, but you're actually just a human being doing what human beings do by having sexual desire that ebbs and flows and that is fluctuating all the time. And we need to really talk about it this way because I think culturally and socially, we're told that sexual desire is something that can be demanded upon, that is consistent over time, or there's something wrong with you if it isn't matching your partner's sexual desire, or if it's different, or if it's changed over time. So I want you to know that you are a normal human because it fluctuates and it ebbs and it flows and it's influenced by many things. So the first thing that sexual desire is influenced by is hormones. The second thing that sexual desire is influenced by is stress. Again, I don't think we talk enough about this. So, when we're going through life transitions and things like having kids or job changes or housing changes or deaths in the family, grief, loss, sickness, illness, complex health diagnosis, um, just managing children in general in your house or having to care for elderly parents. I mean, the list goes on and on and on about these stressors. Stress has a direct impact on sexual desire. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get the engines running with some effort because you can. But what that means is that stress just lengthens the runway, let's say. So let's say, sexual desire is like a runway. So, we can either have a really short runway to take off or we have a really long runway to get to take off. And so what stress does is it lengthens that runway. It makes us significantly longer. And the complicating factor around that is that in relationships, the two people involved in this relationship or multiple people that are involved in this relationship is that their ability to manage stress is very different, which impacts their one runway length. So I often see in couples where one person's runway is really short and the other person's runway is really long. And so it doesn't mean that you are incompatible in your sexual desire for each other. It means there are complicating factors that influence the sexual desire. Because sexual desire comes when we are feeling relaxed and we're having lots of fun and there's joy and there's passion and we just feel alive. I want you to remember to the beginning of dating, like every relationship, the first 3 months are usually the most amazing times. It's the getting to know you phase. It's the anticipation. It's the I don't really know what's going to happen. And you're so interesting. And you think I'm interesting and I'm attracted to you. And there's all these things that are happening at the beginning of a relationship. And that just fuels sexual desire so much because that's really what it needs. It needs all this really great, juicy stuff happening at the beginning of the relationship to really come to terms. So we often meet people at the beginning of a relationship and our sexual desire kind of matches. Our runway is very similar. Then we settle into a relationship and then that changes. And we don't often talk about the influence of external factors like stress that have on the relationship, but also on that person's ability to connect to sexual desire. And then what we do is we will often sometimes take it as rejection. So if you have a really short runway and your partner has a longer runway and they're not quite matching that sexual desire, we take that as rejection instead of really asking some questions around what is your runway like and what are some of the barriers in the way for us to kind of align in our runway length and how can we collaborate together in order to shorten it a little bit or to make mine a little bit longer or share the load. So at least we're at a little bit of a similar runway length when it comes to our compatibility around sexual desire. So stress is a huge mitigating factor when it comes to sexual desire. The third thing that really influences sexual desire and our feelings for that is our connection to our partner. when we are disconnected, distracted, or just disengaged in general from the relationship or from our partner, sexual desire is really hard to connect to. It's really hard to tap into that. Because I want you to think about, when you feel the most alive in your life. And I want you to think about, what is it that you do, or when is the time that you have felt the most alive? And that is the feeling we're looking for in a relationship. We're looking for this aliveness, this live wire. It doesn't have to be overly exciting all the time, because we do settle into routines and habits and familiarity with each other. But that aliveness disappears. And I can tell you from what I see in my office and what I see in people around me, just observing, socially what's happening around me, is that our addiction or overusage of technology is leading to absolute disconnection in relationships. I cannot tell you how many times I've been out for dinner, for lunch, or just out in public, and I see couples and they're on their phones. They're not talking to each other. They're not giving eye contact to each other when they're speaking to each other. They're very disengaged, very distracted, and they're much more caught up in their phones and texting, scrolling, whatever they're doing. They're completely disengaged from each other. People are disengaged from their families, from their kids. And we may think it's really innocent, and it's just, I'm just on my phone. I'm looking at this thing. I got caught up in this video, or I'm watching a TikTok, or whatever it is that you're doing on your technology. We think it's really innocent, but this compounds over time. And what it does is it makes us really just uninterested in the person in front of us. And it makes us really distracted. So we miss these moments of micro connection. We often think that desire or sexual desire is in these grand gestures, the flowers, the fancy dinners out, the dressing up, the parties, the over big gestures. But that's actually not true. Research even shows us that it's not the grand gestures, actually. It's the micro connections. It's the little tiny moments that we connect with each other, the laughing, the sharing a joke, the turning towards each other, giving eye contact, showing interest in what the person's saying, even if you think it's really silly. Because let's face it, a partner says silly things. I know I say silly things all the time in my relationship. So it really is about having those micro connections. I want you to think about micro connections. If sexual desire is a challenge, it's not because you're missing grand, big holiday vacations in Mexico on the beach once a year. It's all the micro moments of not connecting in your every single day life. That's where the energy is. That's where life is. That's where excitement lives, is in this connection with the other person. And technology is the greatest distractor from these moments of micro connection. The fourth thing that really influences sexual desire is, and this is going to sound really counterintuitive, is that it's love. And I know that you might be thinking this might be really silly, and how can love be a, let's say, barrier or a challenge when it comes to sexual desire? It's because love and desire exists in different places. Now, if you want to dive into that topic a little bit more, Esther Perel is the field's leading speaker and researcher when it comes to love and sexual desire and how they're in different places. But to summarize her work, is that when we meet someone for the first time and we're dating for the first time, we are really engaged in this person. And what is part of it is the not knowing. And there's a lot of anticipatory excitement in the not knowing. We don't know what's going to happen on our dates. We don't know where we're going. We don't know what we're going to talk about. We don't really know whether we're going to touch or kiss or make out or have sex. There's all these anticipatory pieces of it. Now, this is always at the beginning of a relationship. And this is great. We love, love, love this part of a relationship. It's kind of like if we could bottle that feeling up, you'd be a cajillionaire, and this is what sometimes illicit drugs will mimic, is this if euphoria, the sense of excitement and amazingness of getting to know another human being that you're attracted to and that is attracted to you. And it is the not knowing that creates a lot of sexual desire. It's the anticipation of the not knowing. So on the other hand, we have love. Love is also amazing. It's like a warm sweater, cozy slippers, cuddling on the on the couch with a blanket together. It's amazing. We love love. We love this feeling of connectedness and security and settlement and the just knowing. The part of love that's interesting is we don't love or fall in love until we are in the space of knowing. There's a predictability of it. There's safety attached to it. We love these parts of people. There's a relationship or a partner that feel very predictable. And in that predictability, it feels safe and our heart feels safe and our soul feels safe with this person, where we assume good intent and we know that they're not going to hurt us. And we want that connected feeling. Now, on one hand, sexual desire is about the not knowing and love is about knowing. So these two things have a really hard time coexisting in the same relationship. And I hope that makes sense to you, because I'm sure that you've noticed even in your own relationship how exciting and interesting it was at the beginning, and how sexual desire is probably really high for you, or higher than it has been for you. And that as you are in this long-term relationship, or in this relationship that's there's love developing, there's a sense of security and safety, and that the sexual desire has kind of come down to maybe just a little bit. So there can be a bit of a disconnect in these spaces. And so how do we rectify this? How do we, move into a different direction when it comes into relationships? Is that we have to create some uncertainty within our sexual desire connection. And so the rules in the bedroom are a little bit different than the rules outside the bedroom, in that we need to be able to play in the bedroom with concepts of power, concepts of, just stepping outside the box when it comes to play, doing things that are different, doing things that maybe spice things up a little bit, which is really difficult because as we get to know each other as sexual partners, when we first start off having sexual intimacy with a new person, it's kind of like we throw all of our moves at this person, right? We're doing all the things, all the fancy things, the non-fancy things. You're just like throwing everything at this person to see what they like and to see what they're really into. And they also do the same thing for you. They try all these crazy things or fun things they've done with other people. And you're just kind of at this experimental phase. And as you kind of have more intimacy with each other and more sexual connection, you start to learn what your partner really likes and what they enjoy. So you start to just do those things. And that's really normal. Like you want to do the things that work really well in that connection. And they are going to do the same thing to you and do the things that work for you. And what happens over time is we stop experimenting and we start doing the things that we know that work or that the person really likes. We stop exploring. And in that lack of exploration, sexual desire can wean just a little bit. And if you've been in a relationship for longer than 10, 15, 20 years, then it starts to wean quite significantly over time. And so what we have to introduce is a little bit novelty, something different. And it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It doesn't mean you have to go out and buy all the sex toys or, change up your room and turn it into a sex den or something. But it's just about bringing in different aspects or sharing your desires with each other, sharing your sexual fantasies with each other, having conversations, maybe doing things different or asking, what do you want to do that's different? What are some things that are on your mind that you want to try? Trust me that some novelty will bring in more sexual desire in your relationship. It is really important. The other thing that typically shows up, so the fifth thing that shows up around sexual desire is our self-esteem. And this can be a really difficult one to talk about because over time our bodies change and they evolve, and they change with children, they change with age, they change with medical complications we may be having, or health diagnoses that we're having, or challenges that we're having. Our skin doesn't look as great. Our hair doesn't look as amazing. Like we just start to age, and that really impacts our self-esteem. And this is particularly important for women because we are told in culture and society that somehow we're supposed to be young forever. All you have to do is look at any ad, skin ad, makeup ad, hair ad. It's all about, youth and longevity and getting rid of wrinkles and getting rid of gray hair. It's like, get rid of all the signs that you possibly are aging and to stay young forever. And so we hold this internalized standard of beauty that is rooted in this idea of youth. And that if we're anything but what we looked like when we were 20, somehow we're not attractive enough, sexy enough, or desirable enough. And this is not to say that men don't experience this, because men do experience this as well when it comes to weight gain and changes in their body as they age, or medical conditions that they're dealing with. That also is a contributing factor. And so these pieces are really important when it comes to self-esteem and sexual desire, because if you don't believe you're desirable, you will not have sexual desire for your partner to be sexually intimate in a relationship. So these pieces of us, this part of how we see ourselves, how I see myself, is a huge contributing factor into sexual desire. And the focus then has to be on you. What do you need in order to feel better about yourself? What do you need to do to increase your self-esteem and self-worth? What actions can you take today to make some changes? What is available to you in order to work on these things? You need to read some books. You need to listen to some podcasts. You need to try out some therapy, or, there are other, like, improving, maybe like buying something new and sexy, getting back to what it felt like when you felt desirable. Because I'm telling you, you are desirable. No matter what size you are, age you are, shape you are, color you are, whatever it is, you are desirable. You don't believe it to be true, but that doesn't actually make it true. And what you believe to be true has so much influence on how you show up in your life, and especially in relationships, and especially when it comes to sexual connection and sexual desire. So how good do you feel about yourself? Because that is going to have a huge impact on your sexual desire. And this isn't about losing weight. Ladies, this isn't about losing weight. This is about loving who you are, exactly how you are, in whatever shape, size, and anything that you are. This is about loving what is happening in your life and who you are in your life, because you are more than the shape of your body, or the cellulite on your ass, or that extra little roll that's been there. You are more than that. And trust me, your partner also thinks you're pretty desirable. You just have to believe it. And the final thing that influences sexual desire is mental health, like general mental health. If you are feeling you're struggling with anxiety, that is going to counteract any sexual desire in your life. If you are living with challenges of depression, that is going to counteract any kind of sexual desire. When you throw medications in there for mental health, so any antidepressants, anti-anxieties, antipsychotics, anything, any medication in that realm, when it comes to mental health, the number one side effect is low sexual drive, because that's what it does. And so we have to take these pieces into account. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't work through it and get to a different place. It's just that with mental health challenges, and if you're living in that stressful time of your life, that runway has gotten very long. Okay, so medications and mental health can create so much length in that runway when it comes to taking off or being ready for sexual connection. So I really want you to think about what's happening for yourself, or maybe your partner. If you're feeling really like you're struggling or feeling frustrated by your partner, is to have a conversation around the impact of mental health on sexual desire. Let's remember to not make this personal. We have to remember and drill it into our brains as much as possible that our partner's sexual desire, what's happening for them, 99% of the time has nothing to do with you. It has to do everything with them. And we need to move out of being defensive or critical or shutting down or being silent, and really opening ourselves up to hearing and to listening and to understanding what's happening for our partner, to have conversations about sexual drive and sexual desire. It's like, what do I need to feel desirable? And to ask our partner, what do you need from me to feel sexually desirable? I'm shocked when I work with couples how often nobody has ever asked this question of their partner. to say, what do you need from me to feel sexually desirable? What do I do? What do I say that makes you feel desired? Because that is the key. If you want to have more sexual intimacy with your partner and you don't know what your partner needs to feel sexually desirable, there's something that's missing. So we need to start having conversations about sexual desire in an open, loving, compassionate way that isn't about defensiveness. It's not finger pointing you. It's more asking questions, reflecting of where you are by yourself, on your own, and being honest as much as possible with your partner about what's happening with you. And what are some of the mitigating factors that are getting in the way of your runway, that are lengthening your runway, and what your partner can do to shorten that, and what you can do to shorten it, because it's not just on your partner. There's so much that you can do. You can work on yourself, work on self-esteem, know what makes you feel desirable, address issues around stress and stress management. If you're having some hormonal issues, please get some help with that. You do not have to suffer through it. And really being open about mental health challenges or medication issues, talking to your doctor about those complications, because it's a really important thing to have a conversation about. Sexual desire is not consistent. It's not constant. It does ebb and flow. It goes up and it goes down. Be curious about the times where it goes up. Grab a journal, write about it, find out what's going on that's increasing my sexual desire. It's probably a vacation. And a lot of people report this about having more sexual desire during vacation. Well, no wonder. You don't have the stress of everyday life. You're not going to work. You're not worried about paying bills. You're just enjoying yourself. You're probably laughing a lot more. Chances are you're in the sunshine. Chances are you're doing activities and enjoying yourself. You're having conversation. You're not just sitting on your phone the entire time. You're engaged in what's happening around you. You're doing new things. You're having new experiences. There's all these things that are part of vacations that makes us much more sexually desirable. But there are moments in your life where you need to also tune into what is happening here where my sexual desire is higher. And if your sexual desire is dropping, it's also being curious about those things, grabbing a journal, writing about it. What are some mitigating factors? What's contributing to this? Instead of just shitting all over yourself and being upset and disappointed and shaming yourself for this, I want you to step into curiosity. Find out what's going on. Be really curious about it. And then ask yourself some questions around it. Have a conversation about this. Trust me, there's gold nuggets in there that you're not tuning into or not paying attention to because you haven't really been curious. We often jump into shoulding ourselves, like showing with all these expectations how something should be, instead of being curious about why it actually is. So I hope this episode was helpful for you. I hope it opened up some conversations for you, for yourself, for your partner, you and your partner. Please share this episode. Anyone in your life, your partner, or people who can benefit from this. Have conversations with young people in your life about sexual desire. We need to change our cultural norms and the way that we're, socialized into this topic and really start to change the narrative and change how we show up in this area. Thank you for tuning in again. As always, be bold, be brave, be well.